Good day. Today I am talking about esophageal foreign bodies. The complaints of dysphagia, odynophagia, and ingested foreign body immediately implicate the esophagus. The esophagus is often the site of pathology in patients who present with chest pain, upper gastrointestinal bleeding, malignancy, and mediastinus. Many diseases of the esophagus can be evaluated over time in an outpatient setting, but several, such as esophageal foreign body and esophageal perforation, require emergent intervention. The esophagus is a muscular tube approximately 20 to 25 centimeters long, primarily located in the mediastinum, posterior and slightly lateral to the trachea, with smaller cervical and abdominal components. There is an outer longitudinal muscle layer and an inner circular muscle layer. The upper third of the esophagus is striated muscle, while the lower half is all smooth muscle, including the lower esophageal sphincter. The esophagus is lined with stratified squamous epithelial cells that have no secretory function. Two sphincters regulate the passage of material into and out of the esophagus. The upper esophageal sphincter prevents air from entering the esophagus and food from refluxing into the pharynx. The lower esophageal sphincter regulates the passage of food into the stomach and prevents stomach contents from refluxing into the esophagus. The upper sphincter is composed primarily of the cricopharyngeus muscle with a resting pressure of around 100 millimeters mercury. The lower sphincter is not anatomically discrete. The smooth muscle of the lower 1 to 2 centimeters of the esophagus, in combination with the skeletal muscle of the diaphragmatic hiatus, functions as the sphincter with a lower resting pressure around 25 millimeters mercury. An empty esophagus collapses, but three anatomic constrictions affect the adult esophagus. 1. At the cricopharyngeus muscle or C6 level, 2. At the level of the aortic arc or T4 level, and 3. At the gastroesophageal junction at the level of T10 to T11. The pediatric esophagus gets two additional areas of constriction, at the thoracic inlet or the level of T1 and at the tracheal bifurcation or the level of T6. The innervation of the heart mirrors that of the esophagus, with visceral and somatic stimuli converging within the sympathetic system. This anatomy makes pain of esophageal and cardiac origin similar. The esophageal venous circulation includes a submucosal plexus of veins that drains into a separate plexus of veins surrounding the esophagus. Blood flows from this outer plexus in part to the gastric venous system, an important link between portal and systemic circulation. Variceal dilatation of the submucosal system can lead to massive upper gastrointestinal bleeding. Dysphagia is difficulty with swallowing. Most patients with dysphagia have an identifiable organic cause. Oropharyngeal through transfer and esophageal through transport dysphagia describe two broad pathophysiologic types. Transfer dysphagia occurs very early in swallowing, as the food bolus moves from the oropharynx through the upper sphincter and is often reported as difficulty in initiating a swallow. Transport dysphagia is impaired movement of the bolus down the esophagus and through the lower sphincter. Transport dysphagia is perceived later in the swallowing process, usually 2 to 4 seconds or longer after swallowing is initiated, and most commonly results in the feeling of the food getting stuck. A history geared toward discerning transfer from transport dysphagia provides a differential of the likely underlying pathology. Another useful classification scheme divides dysphagia into that due to obstructive disease and that due to motor dysfunction. Functional or motility disorders usually cause dysphagia that is intermittent and variable. Mechanical or obstructive disease is usually progressive, such as with difficulty swallowing solids and then liquids. Although often an independent symptom, dysphagia can be associated with odynophagia, which is painful swallowing, suggesting an inflammatory process, or with chest pain that is esophageal in nature, suggesting gastroesophageal reflux disease or a motility disorder. Question the patient regarding the course of symptoms, if it's acute, subacute, or chronic, intermittent, or progressive, food patterns such as solids and liquids, location, and previous disease. Transport dysphagia that is present for solids only generally suggests a mechanical or obstructive process. Motility disorders typically cause transport dysphagia for solids and liquids. Impaction of a poorly chewed meat bolus in the esophagus is a well-recognized complication of esophageal disease. A history of dysphagia may or may not be present. An impacted food bolus can be the presenting complaint for a variety of underlying esophageal pathologies. Patients are generally accurate in identifying location if the bolus is in the upper third of the esophagus. Esophageal filling proximal to the impacted bolus can cause inability to swallow secretions and can present an airway or aspiration risk. We focus the physical examination on the head and neck and perform a neurologic examination. We assess for signs of previous stroke, muscle disease, or Parkinson's disease. Cachexia and cervical or supraclavicular nodes can be observed in patients with cancer of the esophagus. The physical findings are often normal in patients with dysphagia. We watch the patient take a small sip of water. Inability to swallow water generally confirms at least a partial obstruction. When it comes to transfer dysphagia, which is oropharyngeal, this involves discoordination in transferring bolus from the pharynx to the esophagus, swallowing symptoms such as gagging, coughing, nasal regurgitation, inability to initiate swallow, and the need for repeated swallows. There is a risk of aspiration present, and for the long term, there could be weight loss, malnutrition, chronic bronchitis, asthma, and multiple episodes of pneumonia. For neuromuscular disease, which is 80%, you could have cerebrovascular accidents, polymyositis and dermatomyositis, scleroderma, myasthenia gravis, tetanus, Parkinson's disease, botulism, lead poisoning, and thyroid disease causing transfer dysphagia. And for localized disease, you can have pharyngitis, aphthous ulcers, candidal infection, peritonsillar and retropharyngeal abscesses, carcinoma of the tongue, pharynx, larynx, Zenker's diverticulum, cricopharyngeal bar, and cervical osteophytes. There could also be inadequate lubrication such as in scleroderma. For transport dysphagia, which is also known as esophageal, there is improper transfer of the bolus from the upper esophagus into the stomach. There are swallowing symptoms such as food sticking, retrosternal fullness with solids and eventually liquids, and possibly odynophagia. The risk of aspiration is less pronounced than in transfer dysphagia. In the long term, the patient will be malnourished, dehydrated, they can have weight loss, and they could feel the systemic effects of cancer. In obstructive disease, 85%, the causes of transport dysphagia can include foreign bodies, carcinoma, webs, strictures, thyroid enlargement, diverticulum, congenital or acquired large vessel abnormalities, and for motor disorder, there could be achalasia, peristaltic dysfunction such as nutcracker esophagus, diffuse esophageal spasm, and scleroderma. It could also be caused by inflammatory disease. The diagnosis of the underlying pathology is most often made outside of the emergency room. Initial evaluation of dysphagia in the emergency room can include anteroposterior and lateral neck radiographs, which can be helpful in transfer dysphagia and cases in which the transport dysfunction seems proximal. We obtain a chest x-ray if considering transport dysphagia. Again, transport dysphagia is esophageal. Transfer is oropharyngeal. Direct laryngoscopy can be used to identify proximal lesions. Diagnosis of oropharyngeal dysphagia uses a variety of tools. Traditional barium swallow is often recommended as a first test. Then you could proceed to video esophagography, and you could also do manometry and esophagoscopy depending on the clinical picture. If a foreign body is suspected, the diagnostic evaluation takes yet another path. Neoplasms are a common cause of both transfer and transport dysphagia. The esophagus or surrounding structures can be the primary site. A large majority of esophageal neoplasms are squamous cell and the remaining are adenocarcinomas. Risk factors for squamous cell disease include alcohol, smoking, achalasia, and previous ingestion of caustic material with lye. Barrett's esophagus predisposes to adenocarcinoma. Surgery and radiation therapy for head and neck cancer are also important associations. There's usually a fairly rapid progression of dysphagia from solids to liquids, which occurs in 6 months. Bleeding is another sign suggesting neoplasm. We assume neoplasia in patients older than 40 years old with new onset dysphagia. Definitive diagnosis is made by endoscopy with a biopsy. And when it comes to swallowed foreign bodies and food impaction, children 18 to 48 months of age and those with mental illness account for most cases of ingested foreign bodies. Small objects such as coins, toys, and crayons typically lodge in the anatomically narrow proximal esophagus. In adults, dentures are sometimes swallowed because diminished palatal sensitivity leads to unintentional ingestion. Adult candidates for swallowed foreign bodies are those with esophageal disease, prisoners, and psychiatric patients. In adults, most impactions are distal. In children and adults, once an object has traversed the pylorus, it usually continues through the gastrointestinal tract and is passed without issue. If, however, the object has irregular or sharp edges or is particularly wide, which is defined as greater than 2.5 centimeters, or if it's long, which is defined as greater than 6 centimeters, it may become lodged distal to the pylorus. Esophageal impaction can result in airway obstruction, stricture, or perforation, the latter being the result of direct mechanical erosion, such as with ingested bones, or chemical corrosion, such as with ingested bottom batteries. Esophageal mucosal irritation, which is often mechanical from a swallowed bone, for example, can be perceived as a foreign body by the patient as well. Adults with an esophageal foreign body generally provide unequivocal history. Patients often complain of retrosternal pain and may localize the object, often accurately in the upper third of the esophagus. Patients may have dysphagia, vomiting, and choking. If the patient attempts to wash down the object with liquid, or if swallowed secretions pool proximal to the obstruction, coughing or aspiration can occur. In children, the history can be unclear. Signs and symptoms can include refusal or inability to eat, vomiting, gagging, and choking, stridor, neck or throat pain, and drooling. A high degree of suspicion is necessary for unwitnessed ingestions in children, especially in those younger than 2 years of age. Physical examination starts with an assessment of the airway. The nasopharynx, oropharynx, neck, and chest should also be examined but are often unremarkable. Occasionally, a foreign body can be directly visualized in the oropharynx. Plain films are used to screen for radiopaque objects. Coins in the esophagus generally present their circular face on anteroposterior films on coronal alignment, as opposed to coins in the trachea, which show that face on lateral films. Obtaining plain films in patients with food impaction is rarely helpful and can generally be omitted. CT scanning is a very high yield test for esophageal foreign body and has generally replaced the barium swallow test to evaluate ingestion of non-radiopaque objects. CT also delivers excellent information regarding perforation and subsequent infection. Treatment is usually done through endoscopy. Patients in extremis or with pending airway compromise are resuscitated and often require active airway management. Complete obstruction of the esophagus, often distal esophageal food impactions, can lead to proximal pooling of secretions and aspiration. Emergent endoscopy is needed. Other situations that require urgent endoscopy may also occur even if the patients are clinically stable. And in general, if endoscopy is clearly indicated, performing advanced imaging studies delays definitive intervention while adding little value to the care of the patient. In the vast majority of cases, the foreign body can be removed relatively easily with endoscopy without complication. Hospital admission is generally not needed. In stable patients, indirect laryngoscopy or visualization of the oropharynx using a fiber optic scope may allow removal of very proximal objects. For more distal objects, imaging studies are used to define the location and nature of the ingestion. Objects that persist over time or are in the upper half of the esophagus are less likely to pass, and consultation for endoscopy is prudent. So circumstances that warrant urgent endoscopy for esophageal foreign bodies include ingestion of sharp or elongated objects such as toothpicks, aluminum soda can tabs, ingestion of multiple foreign bodies, ingestion of bottom batteries, evidence of perforation, coin at the level of the cricopharyngeus muscle in a child, airway compromise, and presence of a foreign body for more than 24 hours. Expectant treatment is usually done if the object is distal to the pylorus, has a benign shape and nature, and the patient is comfortable and tolerating intake by mouth. And for worrisome foreign bodies that are in the more distal gastrointestinal tract, surgery consultation may be necessary. Alternatives to endoscopy have been advocated by some authors. These include the use of a Foley catheter to remove coins and bouginage to advance the object from the esophagus into the stomach. Generally, the Foley catheter technique and bouginage should only be attempted in patients with blunt foreign bodies present for less than 24 hours and in patients without underlying esophageal disease. Provider comfort with the procedure likely influences the generally low complication rates in the published series. For distal esophageal objects, glucagon 1 to 2 milligrams IV in adults has been used to relax the lower sphincter and allow passage of the object. Success rates of glucagon therapy are generally reported as poor, however, and it may be no better than watchful waiting without other interventions. Special considerations include food impaction, coin ingestion, battery, button ingestion, ingestion of sharp objects, and narcotic ingestion. So when it comes to food impaction, meat is the food most commonly identified in food impaction. Food impaction with complete esophageal obstruction or impaction of food containing bony fragments requires emergency endoscopy. Uncomplicated food impaction may be treated expectantly. Time and sedation often allow the bolus to pass into the stomach, but the bolus should not be allowed to remain impacted for 12 to 24 hours. The use of proteolytic enzymes such as papain to dissolve a meat bolus is contraindicated because of the potential of severe mucosal damage and esophageal perforation and the availability of superior alternatives. If glucagon therapy is attempted, an initial dose of 1 to 2 milligrams IV is given for adults. If the food bolus is not passed in 20 minutes, an additional dose can be given. Many centers use endoscopy to remove esophageal coins in children. Removal with a Foley catheter is done under fluoroscopy, and advanced airway management should be immediately available. If the patient is placed in the Trendelenburg position, we do this to prevent aspiration of the object. The catheter is passed down the esophagus beyond the object, the balloon is inflated, and the catheter is slowly withdrawn, bringing the object with it. Complications can include airway compromise and mucosal injury, but in experienced hands, the rate of these events are low. A Boden battery lodged in the esophagus is a true emergency requiring prompt removal because the battery may quickly induce mucosal injury and necrosis. Perforation can occur within 6 hours of ingestion. Morbidity caused by the battery is likely related to the flow of electricity through a locally formed external circuit. Lithium cells are associated with disproportionately adverse outcomes, probably due to higher voltages. A management algorithm for Boden battery ingestion is as follows. We check if resuscitation is necessary. If it's not, we localize through radiographic modalities. And if it's in the esophagus, if endoscopy is immediately available, we remove it through endoscopy. If it's not available, we have to check if there's a reliable history of ingestion of a duration of 2 hours. If it's less than 2 hours, we can remove with endoscopy. If it has been ingested for 2 hours or more, we can consider Foley balloon catheter technique. And if that fails, we could do endoscopic removal. If it's past the esophagus, if the patient is symptomatic, we have surgical consult for removal. If they're not symptomatic, we have to check if the magnet was co-ingested. If it was, we do not wait for symptoms and remove endoscopically if possible. If the patient is asymptomatic and the magnet was not co-ingested, we can repeat radiographs weekly and continue home observation. And management would develop with the symptoms of the patient. For ingestion of sharp objects in the esophagus need immediate removal. Sharp objects may pass into the stomach simultaneously. Because intestinal perforation from ingested sharp objects that pass distal to the stomach is common, the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy guidelines recommend removal of sharp objects by endoscopy while they are in the stomach or duodenum. If intestinal perforation occurs, then it is usually at the ileocecal valve. If the object is distal to the duodenum at presentation and the patient is asymptomatic, the object's passage should be documented with daily plain films. Surgical removal should be considered if 3 days elapse without passage. The development of symptoms or signs of intestinal injury such as pain, emesis, fever, and gastrointestinal bleeding requires immediate surgical consultation. Narcotic couriers or body packers ingest multiple small packets of a drug in order to conceal transport. A favored packet is the condom, which may hold up to 5 grams of narcotic. These packets are often visible on plain films. Rupture of even one such packet may be fatal, and endoscopy is contraindicated because of the risk of iatrogenic packet rupture. If the packet appears to be passing intact through the intestinal tract, observation until the packet reaches the rectum is the favored treatment. Some authors also advocate the use of whole bowel irrigation to aid the process. Our reference is Centennial's Emergency Medicine. Thank you very much.